Welcome to What is Happiness? If you haven't got with the channel before, this is a space where we talk about everything to do with people's thoughts, feelings, and journeys into finding happiness. I'm so excited to finally share with you our very first full-length sit-down interview with someone who has their own incredible journey to finding happiness. I'm glad to call this person my friend and someone who's been a mentor in my own personal journey. Doel has battled some of life's major lows, bouts of depression and addiction to alcohol, homelessness, and even bouts of suicide and self-harm. And he's gone through an incredible journey to become the man that I know. He's persevered through such lows to become a successful man with his own business, a motivated and determined person who puts himself through crazy physical challenges, and someone who has found his own definition of happiness. An organic story that I think you're going to enjoy. I really hope you like this interview. If you do, please like, comment, subscribe, hit the follow button. You know what to do. Without further ado, you're watching What is Happiness, and welcome.
Welcome to Doel.
Thank you very much.
Woo!
Wow. Number one.
So, how's things? How are you doing today, Ian?
I'm good. Yeah. Very well. Yeah, life's good.
Nice.
Life's good.
Got some plans later on this weekend?
Got some plans.
Good man.
Got a night out.
Nice.
Got some running to do.
Good.
So yeah, it's good.
Good to hear. Good. So, why don't we begin where all good stories start, which is at the beginning.
Right.
And why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and where you come from?
Okay. So I grew up on a farm near Winchester, so middle of Hampshire. Brother, sister, cat.
Hello.
And to be honest, it was fairly idyllic. So yeah, we grew up in the middle of nowhere. We had our closest sort of friends were half a mile up the road. We ran riot on acres of land and just had a great time. We really didn't care about much in the world.
In terms of upbringing and how you got on with your parents, what was that like?
Young relationships were really good, to be honest. We were just trusted. We were just trusted to be home, be sensible. Wasn't always the case. Did a lot of stupid things, which they happily remind us about. Generally, things involving fires and silly things like that, and jumping people on bikes and all that sort of weird, wonderful things that kids do. But yeah, we were allowed to pretty much free rein.
Nice.
So that was brilliant, and sort of can't sort of thank them enough for that upbringing, if I'm honest.
Great.
So
great.
Yeah, it was nice.
It's really refreshing, interesting. I know we caught up a couple of times about what that upbringing was like. So different from like the city lifestyle, and the kind of the openness and freedom and some of the things you got up to is really interesting. Playing in a barn and
all sorts of
crazy
weird and
stuff.
wonderful stuff.
Yeah, that's mad.
Yeah, and I'd say the only thing that actually I missed from that was having mates around to do stuff with. So it was always, you always sort of doing stuff on your own, or there was probably 5 or 6 of us, what I class as local, but that's local within a couple of miles. And we'd all catch up, always at the same point or whatever. But it was always that, actually, all my mates were at school. All my schoolmates lived sort of down the road, so it was like, I have to get on my bike and go and see them. And that was always a bit of a pain. But okay, can't complain.
Fair enough. So, did you finish school after like year 11? Did you go into college? I don't think I actually ever asked that.
No, so I finished at 16.
Okay.
In fact, I think I finished it even before my birthday. I think I finished at 15. Not that that matters.
Well, it's the same birthday, by the way.
Yeah.
I thought I'd just shout that out. That's cool.
Obviously, that's why I was so cool. So, finished school at 15. Decided that I was going to have the summer to figure out what I wanted to do. And I sort of knew what I wanted to do, which was go into print or something of that sort of field. And my backup plan was to join the army.
Right.
So it was, job by September. If I haven't got a job by September, then I'll go and join the army.
Was any of that parental enforced, actually?
No.
Right.
We were expected to get a job.
Okay.
We weren't expected to go to college. Wasn't even discussed.
Got you. Uni was therefore just not even a
Uni
factor.
was something that posh people did.
Right, got you.
No offense, possible. But yeah, college, uni, that was just something that other people did. And we were very much, no, once you leave school, you work, you earn, you pay. So that's what we did. So yeah, I worked all summer, and then got a job around the end of August. Started in September with my job, so I did an apprenticeship, 3-year apprenticeship, and then ended up going to college with that as well. So
right,
sort of best of both worlds.
amazing. So walk me through the time in which you ended up having kids, because you're a really passionate and really good father, somewhat single dad at the moment, of
Right.
2 kids who are now teenagers.
Not kids.
Yeah, who are late teenagers.
Yeah.
God, one of them's 20. You got 20.
Yeah, I know. Awful.
So walk me through what that experience was like.
Well, I knew I wanted kids early on. I knew from a really early age I wanted kids, like sort of 15, 16. I think that was sort of, I don't know if it's still the same today with kids, but when we were growing up, that was just expected.
Right.
You know, you grew up, you got a job, you got a girlfriend, you ended up getting married, you had kids, you sort of bought a house locally, and that was it. Ended up having kids. What was I? I was actually about 28, 29. So I met their mum when I was 21, I think. So I was 25 when we got married. And it was like, right, we'll have a couple of years of, just knocking about and going and seeing stuff and having nice holidays. And then it was like, well, I don't really want to be a dad over 30. And Nick was quite keen as well. So it was like, fine, we'll have kids now. So Joe was born when I was 29, I think. And then Izzy was born when I was 31. So
I know shortly after that time you described and talked to me before about hitting a point where things sort of crashed in terms of the trajectory and what seemed like quite a positive journey up until that point.
I'd say an easy journey up until that point,
right.
if I'm honest.
Yeah.
There's always stuff people don't recognise or even know what's going on, but up until that point it was fairly easy.
So what got hard?
Divorce.
Right. Okay. Right.
So I didn't find marriage hard. I didn't find kids particularly hard. And I've really thought about it recently, just because lots of stuff's been going on. But I think the one thing that I figured up until that point, my sort of life was always moving up, and then it just sort of stabled out, and it was like, right, well, your husband, your dad, I earn enough money to keep us all going. We had a nice house, and it was like, right, now it's just keeping all that together. And it sounds really wrong, but that's a little bit boring.
Right.
And actually, what I couldn't see in all of that was any more growth. I'm just one of these people. I need to be doing stuff. I need to be growing in some form or another. And I felt at the time that was sort of getting squeezed out we're sort of in this safe little bubble, and all we need to do is maintain this safe little bubble, and that's not what I wanted to do at all.
So did you find yourself kind of fighting against that lifestyle and thinking this just isn't right for me?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, that's really natural, I think, for a lot of people, yeah.
And then that led to various different things, and yeah, we ended up splitting up. It's about 34, I think.
Right.
Yeah, about 34.
Okay. So, so you're splitting up at 34, and I guess that isn't, while you recognise that boat that you were in was slightly boring, certainly obviously wasn't the direction that you expected to go in.
No. I'm not sure I'd use the word boring, but it was just...
Stagnant, maybe?
Maybe, yeah. And not really where I wanted to be, or not where I could see myself being. And even through lots of conversations, it was sort of trajectory wasn't changing at all. And yeah, I think we actually both then wanted different things. I think parenthood brought that out in us. It pushed me on, and I think with Nick, it just made her want to be more safe.
Right.
So actually, you sort of got one going, I'm really happy here, and the other one sort of going, I am, but I really need to do other stuff.
Right. Okay.
And at the time, most of that was work. And then the print industry is fairly volatile. And I lost. So when Joe was born, the week Joe was born, I was supposed to start a new job. And then within 2 years, that company had gone under. So the day that I was supposed to start the next job, Izzy was born. So there's a bit of a pattern there. And within 2 years, they'd been bought out and we'd moved. But the original company where I was when Joe was born was really good. In our call, they were sort of talking about taking over the company at some point, which, from my point of view, is brilliant. This is what I want to do. And Nick was anything but that. No, we've got a nice house, we've got a nice life. Let's just maintain. So I think that's just, from a personal point of view, something that I've realised we're just both in very different spaces. So yeah, bit of a strange one.
So there was a period of time in that where you've just been describing. There was a period in which you described previously that you hit rock bottom, and it was a bit of a catalyst for you to make some changes.
Yeah.
Do you mind walking through what that rock bottom was?
No, that's fine. So yeah, divorced around 34, 35, and I think I saw that as, I felt like I was a bit of a problem because I knew I wanted different things. So from my point of view, walking away or whatever, however you want to put it, I was the problem. So if I got rid of the problem, then life would just be easier for everyone else, if that makes sense. And within 3 or 4 months, it just turned ridiculous. From, had a nice 4-bedroom home, nice family, kids are good, to not really knowing where I was staying, not having anywhere really to stay, so I was sleeping at a mate's on his sofa. It's not the best place to be.
The lad was kind of all over the place at that point, I'm sure.
And I just I didn't sort of want to be around people, if I'm honest. So I just I actually ended up sleeping rough for a bit, just I don't really want to be around anyone, don't need anyone else involved in my crap. Just disengaged with life and people. And the only thing I really sort of reconnected with was work. I'd taken another management role, and it was just right. Well, that's what I do. So I would go to work at 6 in the morning. I'd still be there at 6 at night. Right. And it was like, right, that's my focus. Okay. And the only other time I really focused was when I had the kids. Right. And as the sort of year went on, so I think we split up May, June, and by the time Christmas rolled around, it was just, I was waiting for 10:30 for the pub to open. Right. Just all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff. I slept in the car. Thought about suicide, attempted suicide process. I've never been a massive drinker, and then it was just a way out. It was just a way of killing life, if I'm honest. So say I had the kids, I would have the kids. Nick would come home. And I would, rather than just descend into this argument, because that's generally where we were, it was like, right, well, I'll leave you to it. And it was literally, right, I'll drive as close as I can to home, and then I'll just find a pub. Right. And I'll just stop and drink. And then it was, well, didn't really matter how many, didn't really matter where, when, who. And so that sort of perpetuated itself into prime. Well, if I can, rather than go somewhere, so rather than go back to my mates to stay, I drive somewhere that's close to a pub and it's a bit secluded, sleep in the car, don't need to bother anyone, I can have as many drinks as I want, and it's just easier. You don't have to think about anyone else. Really helps with that disengaging, doesn't it, I guess, And was that at all linked with the suicide attempt? Was there anything related to alcohol at that point, or was that actually purely kind of you thinking, I don't want to say rationally, but... No, I think that was more of a rational thought that was not alcohol fueled in that way. I know I was having problems with alcohol because I can remember being at work at 10 in the morning thinking, come on, hurry up, I want the pubs to open.
Right.
Going because I was just having a bad day.
Mm-hmm.
Literally sort of walking into a meeting going, right, I'm just going to run out, I'll be half an hour, knowing that I was going to the pub. I think I came back about 2.5 hours later, fairly buoyed up, had a great afternoon, and sort of really didn't care.
Right.
Just genuinely didn't care.
Right.
And I thought this is and although you're doing it, and although you're in it, and although you know everything you're doing is wrong, that was just where I was, who cares?
Right.
Who genuinely cares? What do I care? And what's the worst that can happen? Was sort of where I was. Yeah. Okay. Sort of at rock bottom as it is. I don't have anywhere to call home. Didn't really have much money because that was all going towards mortgage and kids and all of that sort of thing. And although I decided to walk away, that's a really hard one then to get your head around. Because obviously you don't just go, oh, I'm going to walk away from marriage. It's, there's lots of other things involved. So then you're sort of questioning. No, there was lots of questions. Should I have done it? Should I have walked away? What was the best thing to do?
Second guessing yourself.
Yeah,
really?
basically.
Yeah. And
then that led to, well, me coming to the conclusion that I was the problem, and therefore if I wasn't around, the problem doesn't exist. Easy, everyone can get on with their life.
Mm-hmm.
And then that sort of led to, effectively thoughts about suicide, and then basically one evening sort of walking into the sea and thinking, well, fine, if it happens, it happens.
Mm-hmm.
And then just catching myself at some point shit, I can't do this.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't quite think. Well, the reason was that I caught myself was because of the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And it was more because of something that had been said in the past about suicide being selfish. And at the time I never really understood the comment. And as I say, I was trying to take myself out the equation because I thought that was easier, but actually looking back, it would have been selfish of me to have done it because Nick wouldn't have had any support, kids wouldn't have had any other parent.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually thought I can't do that because it is selfish. And I thought, as hard as this is going to be, I need to sort of stop.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point I did. Got up the next day, went to work as normal.
Mm-hmm. After nothing happened?
Tried to carry on, yeah. And then I had a couple more episodes where really sort of drunk quite heavily, again thought about suicide, but didn't do anything about it at the time. And then that led to, rather than actually knowing that I wasn't going to kill myself because that wasn't the best way to go forward, even though it did get close a couple of times, or the following year, actually started self-harming because that was just easier.
Wow, okay.
That's easier to do.
Sorry, the only reason I say wow is because we actually haven't ever touched on that. We've gone, you and me, in personal conversations have gone into quite a few deep topics, and actually the period of time where you were contemplating suicide, something we've opened up and expanded on very recently. But I didn't realise self-harm was also a part of the picture as well, in the sense of, and again to explain my wow moment to it was, I was expecting, and one of the questions I'm going to get to in a bit is what was the catalyst for change in regards to you being at this low point, but thinking that maybe suicide was it. But then actually this was a really prolonged episode for you, in which the breaking up with your partner to then attempting suicide to then maybe even continuing with self-harming as a perhaps lesser form of...
It was just it felt like an easier way of, it was like a weird punishment. I was really pissed off with myself. I was raging against the world for everything that was going on. And it was just easier to do that to myself than it was to cause anyone else harm. So I think that sort of started after the Christmas period. And I'd had quite a few. By then I'd managed to get myself a flat but it was in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
So I really love this self-isolation bit. And then I just found myself like I would just sit in the middle of a flat, it was effectively in the middle of the woods. And I would just drink. I can remember drinking just bottles of whiskey, waking up on the floor, all sorts of weird and wonderful sort of stuff just waking up one morning, bottle of whiskey there, half a glass full, bit of sick, just thinking, fuck is going on? And obviously that's not great, it's not somewhere you want to be.
Sure.
So I'd have moments where I'd catch myself, but I think when you're in that period, you can catch yourself and you can stop things at that period, but you can't dig your way out, if that makes sense. So self-harming was just an easier way of digging myself out fine, it's something I can do, something that only affects me, and there's some weird relief out of it. And the only problem with that is it doesn't last very long, so you tend to do more.
Right.
And then that led to another episode where I had to move out the flat because I couldn't actually afford it. And I thought, right, well, do you know what? I've got to that point again when I had a few beers or whatever. And I can remember thinking, well, if I'm going to cut myself, I might as well try and do it properly this time. And I can remember being led in the bath because I didn't want anyone to clean up the mess.
Right.
If it got messy, probably would. Sort of what blood does. And I just led them and thought, fuck, what am I actually doing? So I called a mate. And I didn't tell her what was going on because she knew I was in a bit of a shit place. But she didn't know much, if I'm honest. I can remember just talking to her and just needed to hear someone's voice. I didn't need anyone to go, are you alright, what's going on? It was more a case of, hi, how are you? You alright? What are you up to? And just that distraction, just having someone to sort of distract where I was. And by the end of the conversation, it was like, right, I just want to go to bed. Tomorrow's a new day. Can we start again? So again, it was that sort of, that little stop, I guess. That sort of stopped that one. And then, from there it was just trying to get better, just trying to figure stuff out. Didn't stop harming. That continued for the year. But slowly, the more the time went on, the easier things just got in life. The old classic of time is a healer.
Right.
Sort of is.
Right. Did you get a little bit uncomfortable with being uncomfortable in the sense of course, not having that formal relationship setting to then raise your kids in and having the home?
I'm becoming an expert at it. Just I could have nowhere, so I'd have the kids on the weekend. Every Friday I'd have nowhere to go with the kids. Because technically by then I didn't have a home, so I was sofa surfing again. And every weekend I would just figure something out, like on the Friday. And I just made it into a game with them.
Right.
Come on, we're going to go stay here with Uncle James or whatever, or my mum, or, we're going to go to sleep, or so-and-so's gone away for the weekends, we're going to have their house, who's that? I don't know. Sort of thing. Just a friend of a friend. I mean, I even borrowed a friend of a friend's house once at Christmas, just to have somewhere to be. So I'm really, really grateful to a lot of people. A lot of people went out their way, knew I was having problems. So a lot of people went out their way to make it easier, but I think when you're in it, you're just running with it. You don't think about it. I didn't necessarily treat people very well. You're not treating
yourself well.
Just too selfish.
Right.
Okay. At that moment in time, I was just too selfish.
Right.
And I really didn't care about anything really apart from the kids. As long as they had somewhere to stay when I was with them, that was enough.
Right.
So for the weekend I'd switch on. The moment I dropped them back, switch off, go to the pub, just carry on as normal, sort of thing.
So you've mentioned here, I'm really interested in that you mentioned a couple of times catching yourself during those times where you're by yourself and realising that
either the self-harming or perhaps the suicidal thoughts or even the attempt itself wasn't what you wanted to do and where you wanted to be. So how did that change to where you are now? How did you get to the man that I know that is so motivated and headstrong and determined and has a very successful business? What made you flip the script? Because I know one of the small changes, which I'm sure you're going to touch on in a moment, is where you decided to go self-employed. In terms of life journey, where did you flip the script in saying, right, this isn't good enough, I need to make things better? Was there a catalyzing moment and therefore a series of big changes, or was it maybe smaller?
I think it was all little changes.
Mhm.
So I'd actually sort of by the middle of, so about a year on, I'd changed jobs, taken a massive backward step, which wasn't great, but it was needed. I was doing pretty good at screwing that up,
Right.
if I'm honest.
Okay.
I sort of dabbled with a couple of relationships, but done a really good job on screwing those up.
Mhm.
And therefore sort of I still felt like anyone I was around I was damaging them.
Mhm.
But there was the flip side of that, and actually I want to be around people as well. I'd sort of come out of that, or I want to be left alone. So I just knew I was doing a really good job of screwing up most things I was touching at that point. And then there was a couple of things. Someone had said to me that I know you're depressed, you should go and seek help. And I knew I was depressed. I knew I was in a dark place. They were like, you should go to the doctor. And I was like, yeah, okay, fine. I was reluctant to go just because of past family history and stuff. You know, no, I can't be depressed. It's not going to work for me. And I ended up going to hospital for something completely unrelated. And one of the nurses catching me, and as I was walking out, she sort of collared me, quite an older lady, and said, "Are you alright?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course I am, fine." And she sort of grabbed me by the arm and went, "Well, are you alright? You seem to have loads of cuts up your arm." And I just sort of made some excuse about it was work and everything else. And at that point, I walked away and thought, shit, if people are now realising, and okay, I guess it's sort of their job to realise, but if people are realising that I'm not doing a great job of disguising this anymore,
Mhm.
and therefore maybe I need to change where I'm going. I'm screwing up. Basically felt like I was screwing up anyone I got close to. I was still sort of making sure I was fine for the kids, but still didn't have anywhere to live. Still sort of self-harming. People were realising work wasn't going great. I just thought I need to change something.
Mm.
And I'd moved in with some friends, and it was just that was a bit of a calm, so I could actually hang out with them. And they knew what was going on. They knew us as a family, and it sort of proved a bit of a respite, and they just let me be what I needed to be.
Mm-hmm.
So there was always a bit of a joke in the house that if I ever went out and said I'm going to go to the shop, do you want anything? They always said no, because they always sort of knew that I would never come back within sort of 20 minutes, and I would disappear for 2 or 3 days and things like that.
Right.
And that's just sort of where I was.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be because I end up going down the pub or meeting someone. It's just ridiculous. And it was such a ridiculous time. I just started to catch myself, this isn't doing me any good. This is doing more harm than good.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't keep going like this. So it was just those little things, catching those little things and just thinking, this isn't where I want to be. This isn't what I imagine my life to be. And actually, I need to be better.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up, the company that I was working for went under. So I had a couple of months bumming around, sort of doing whatever I could. And then I got offered a management job again, but it was in Portsmouth. So I took it. I was living up in Salisbury at the time, so I was travelling. And I thought, why am I travelling? And the reason I was in Salisbury was for the kids, but I wasn't seeing them. So it was like, well, No point in me being around Salisbury because I can just go back and see the kids. So
you're trying to make it practical.
So I was trying to make it practical. So I moved to Portsmouth, moved into like a shared house.
And what year was that roughly?
Oh, what was that? I think I was about 36. Something like that.
So maybe these whole episodes of low points lasted
36,
what?
37. So
Almost
about 2 or 3 years.
Two or 3 years.
Yeah.
Of
I think
course.
it was a 2-year period, and then I moved to Portsmouth.
Mm.
And I can't say they just instantly disappeared because they didn't.
But that's clearly a major life step for you to start getting things sorted. You moved not only location geographically, but also moving somewhere in order to start picking up your life. I guess that must have been a fairly remarkable change, whether you recognised it at the time or not.
I took it as a milestone change. You know.
Great.
Right, this is a new beginning. And I need to get my shit together to be able to pay my bills.
So you were actively trying to get it together at that point.
But at the same time, I can remember sitting in this. I called it the back bedroom at the time, so that was my room. I can remember thinking, "Fuck, has happened to my life?" You know. 2 or 3 years ago, I had a beautiful 4-bedroom home. Backed onto, I could see Salisbury Plain from my garden, and it's like, and now I'm living in someone's spare room. And this is fairly crap. As it worked out, it was probably one of the best moves I did. And yeah, over the course of the next sort of year or so, the space away from Salisbury allowed me to live a bit easier, because I've managed to create this little world where I've just got myself into trouble for basically just being me. And I knew I had to get away from that, so actually having somewhere to start again was really, really good. The job was good, really enjoyed that, but I ended up actually getting the sack about 6 months later.
Okay.
Randomly by then, divorce had come through. So it was a bit weird. I literally got divorced, which isn't a celebration. I don't know how anyone celebrates that. It's sort of like this big stamp of failure is how it feels. So that's a bit weird.
So was that at least a?
But it was a
door closing.
It was a door closing moment. That's been a long couple of years,
right?
And that's been hard going. And quite freeing. Then in a cool, I can sort of, this is a bit of a reset again. And again, another little sort of moment. So then I got the sack randomly. Still don't know why, but whatever. Went and helped out a friend for a couple of months. Toyed with actually working with her properly, you know, like, do we do this as a partnership sort of thing? And actually I chose against that at the time. Just because it wasn't right for me. Got another job in Portsmouth, so I got really lucky. And that one went much better, because that one lasted 9 months before I got the sack. And that sort of opened the door of, well, what do I do now? And I'd had an idea about, I don't know, 10 years before, about starting my own business and how I wanted that to happen. And
but obviously that nothing would have gone further with that idea at the time, because of course shortly after you had the idea, things would have gotten
and I think that was part of the problem. In a cool, I've got this idea, I know it's going to work,
right?
But it's not the safe. There's the safe road, and then there's the tricky one.
Right.
And that one's going to be great. It's going to be fun, but it might all blow up. And if it does, it's start again.
Right.
And I think I'm sort of that person that I'm prepared to do that. Whereas when you're in a relationship, you have to sort of go together rather than on your own. So at that point, I was encouraged to give it a try. So I did, and I have never looked back. So
amazing.
That was 8-9 years ago now.
Wow.
So yeah, and I've been working for myself ever since. Love it.
So how much of that do you think contributed to you kind of getting stuff together and being the person you are now, who does these absolutely crazy runs and physical challenges, that, you know, has his life in order and looks after his kids all the time? And you were a single dad for a big portion of that time as well, over the last, since you, I guess, have been self-employed in particular. So
Was being self-employed a big catalyst as well?
I think I got to the point where I'd started the self-employment. As I say, I had some really good help around that. I had some really good support. So I think that was a bit of a break for me. Cool, I feel stable. The sort of timing felt right. So I made lots of mistakes along the way. Didn't have any clue about running the business, if I'm honest. But I also felt quite accountable for stuff. So we would sit down at sort of the end of every month or whatever and just go through where things were, how it's growing. And within 6 months, I was employing people, and it was like I've got more work than I know what to do with. So at that point, it was like, cool. Now I can really kick in the business idea in the first place and just grow from there, which is what I did. But I think at the start of that, when the kids came to live with us, it was, if I'm going to do this properly, which sounds really crap when I say it out loud, kids were 10, 11, around that age. And I'm thinking, if I'm going to do this parenting thing properly, rubbish. Because I don't think I've done a bad job up until that point. But I thought I just want to be, someone they can look up to and go, shit, that's what I want to be like. Or if dad can do that, and the old classic of, oh, he's knocking on a bit. If he can do that, then why can't I? And I wanted to capture that at a young enough age that sort of got ingrained in their brains a bit. The only thing that's stopping you is you. So if you think you can do it and you really want to work at it, you can do it. And part of that was obviously, I never thought I'd be a businessman ever. I still don't think I was still a massive child, so as you well know. So I do look at myself now as a businessman, be called an entrepreneur and all that sort of stuff, and I don't know if I buy into that at all. There are lots of people who run their own businesses. I think it's grown up and it's just showing that anything is possible. Because from my point of view, I grew up on a farm in the middle of nowhere. We didn't have any money. I think the general gist of it was, you live on the farm till you're able to leave. You stay there or work and you leave, or you leave and get a trade. You get married, you have a little home, that's it. That's sort of life over. So to own my own business, things like that, it was just different level for me.
And you're in your 8th, 9th year of training?
9th year I think now. And it was just that, right, well, if I can do this, then I can show the kids different stuff. And that's probably where you came in, because that's when I started boxing, because that's something I always wanted to do.
Wow, so that's where we met up in that journey.
And that's where we met up. And at that point, it was like, well, you can't box because you're too old. And I can remember having conversations at work, because one of the other lads who I worked with, who was my age, he'd gone to his gym and they were like, no, you're too old, mate. So I wandered into Portsmouth Uni boxing, thinking, oh God, everyone here is 17, 18. And they were like, no, come and join. And from that moment I thought, it was cool, excellent. Now how far can I take this?
We've never had the opportunity to put that journey in together with how we met, and also how you found boxing. And I guess that was another catalyst moment of trying to push yourself physically and mentally. And God, so yeah, I mean, we haven't explained, but how I met Ian was actually when I was going through, I don't know when this goes out, if I've gone through my own journey, which is I want to be a huge piece of this channel and this whole project and answering this question of what is happiness. But when I met Ian when I was still boxing and competing at that point in time, when for the University of Portsmouth Boxing Club, and I started coaching for the club probably right about the same time that you joined.
Yeah.
And then coaching ended up being my sole endeavour with the club for the most part, because of my own injuries and stopping me from being able to compete. So to hear that that's where you and me then joined in terms of where you were in that journey, which we've touched on and talked about loads of times. And one thing I found that brought a smile to my face and made me really, really happy when like when you were explaining this journey is when you talked about taking the kids on and wanting to be somebody that not only they looked up to, but instilling in them through example that you can do whatever you put your mind to. And I just thought that's who you, to me, when we started interacting and being close and started private coaching with you, that's who you've always been to me.
So what?
So
It might not work for my kids. Shining example.
But to think that, like, you do that by example, and to think where that mindset really started in terms of as an adult, you went, right, I need to live this and I need to do this.
Yeah, I was probably 38, somewhere there, something like that.
Amazing.
It was just like, no, I need to do stuff. I need to do stuff differently. So yeah.
Amazing.
And yeah, so started boxing because that was something I wanted to do. Never had the opportunity, and then obviously found out you guys were around the corner, so it was like cool. Genuinely liked getting punched in the face. It's a bizarre experience, but I love it.
Now you're. I don't want to make light of self-harm, but you're pushing yourself in a different capacity.
Yeah, it's controlled.
Right, and instead of doing it in a sense of causing harm to yourself to almost alleviate pain, you're causing discomfort in order to cause growth.
Yeah.
With something like boxing, and also the absolutely crazy physical endeavours you do with the runs that you go on and the Ironman challenges, etc. So when did that start then? If you started boxing at that point in your journey, was the Ironman challenges? I assumed that you were always a runner.
I always played football as a kid.
Yeah.
Played up until sort of early 30s. When Joe was born, I gave up.
And it was competitive as well. You weren't just playing casually.
It was decent standard. So, so I'd always played football. Stopped for a few years. Decided that I liked food and sort of things like that. Then someone I worked with, who randomly I call my dad, because we got on so well.
Jokingly, or in a
no, actually, genuinely called him dad.
Right.
To the point of we actually texted the other day because he's moved to Australia 2 days ago.
Oh wow.
He was a really good runner, and actually he was the one who even talked to me about ultra running and things like that. So he'd always moved around the world, and he used to sort of tell me about runs he did through France, and he'd be like, "Oh yeah, we'd run for the day." I'm like, "How do you even run for a day?" He's like, "Yeah, it'd be great." And then you'd have a beer at the end. I'm like, "Why do you want a beer at the end? You're running for like 12 hours. What's that about?"
That's so
and I really couldn't get my head around that. So he and I, being me, said, "Oh, I could beat you in a race anyway, be fine." And then 10 miles later realised that he was an absolute beast and just hammered me for fun.
Wow.
But I sort of enjoyed it because it was a way of pushing myself. So yeah, coming back, I had a few years of not doing much at all, and then moving to Portsmouth, having the kids. I just found that actually moving to Portsmouth, my world opened up a bit. That's possibly a relationship I was in, because when you're with someone else or someone who's not sort of been in your world before, they bring other things. So there was a lot of other stuff that got brought into life, and I've always enjoyed the mad ones. I always enjoyed them. I've never done any of the Tough Mudder or anything like that, but there's a run locally called the Hell Runner. It used to be called the Hell Runner, it's not anymore. And that was just 10 to 12 miles, just absolute beasting around an army base in the middle of winter. Lots of water, lots of mud, and it was great fun. It was possibly the one thing I look forward to every year. I can remember I did it with a lad from work, and it was just madness. Why are we doing this to ourselves? And it was in fact it was even before the Tough Mudder days. There were no runs like that around. It was just, you go along and you swim through this bog, and I've done it 5 or 6 times, and I got close to hypothermia one year because it was that cold. Cut all my ankles going through puddles because they were ice. Things like that, and it was like, this is what I love. I just love it. There's a real sort of
extreme challenge, I imagine.
Beasting yourself,
right.
Seeing where you can be.
Wow.
About it. And then that led to sort of further triathlons, cycling events, and now into the world of running. I just enjoy outdoor running.
Mhm.
I enjoy running around in the sort of cross country and hills and things. And then, yeah,
Fascinating.
led
Wow.
led me to Wales. So, yeah.
This has been such a, already, haven't got to the big question yet, but this has been such an edifying and interesting chat so far to hear how far you came in such a relatively short period of time, but you've hit some very severe episodes. You know, with all the Ukraine-Russia crisis going on, I heard this really good headline that the last week was the week where decades happened.
Right.
And you probably had that time and time again, weeks when you felt like decades were happening, where you were going through so many stages. It's so interesting and motivating and uplifting to hear your journey. I don't know whether you ever realise that. And I know taking praise as well as being offended is something that you might struggle with, but that is so interesting and so organic and so real, what you went through in terms of all the branches that you hit on the way down, and then the way that you had to just claw together and figure out what your next steps were as you took them, and then doing the things to do it. So moving as you needed to do and taking the steps forwards, just going into your local boxing gym.
And that was it. And even joining the gym was, I always describe it as sort of going home. And I hadn't had a gym for a while. And I can remember walking in, and I think I only knew a couple of lads. So I knew Mario, because I know we discussed that the other day. And he was
Shout
like,
out Mario.
yeah, hello Mario, there you are. And I was crapping it. I knew what the gym was, so obviously the whole MMA and kickboxing and stuff like that. I was crapping it. Nearly 40. I'm really stepping out my comfort zone here. But solid, I love it.
Love that. Wow.
And it was just, the one thing I loved about it most was everyone was pushing each other.
Yeah, each other. Yeah,
and it wasn't a case of we're pushing each other in a really, how do I word this correctly? Really sort of arrogant, I'm better than you, I'm stronger than you, that sort of way. It was just, I'm going to push as hard as I can, and therefore I want you to push the same. And it was just that, right, well, if you can do that, I can do that.
Right.
And actually, I'm going to take my age out of this, because I was a lot older than most. And I'm going to match everyone. And I'm not only going to match everyone, I want to go further. And then they put sort of challenges up on the boards about running and stuff, and it was like, no, cool, I want to be in that top here. So yeah, that doesn't always work out as you get older.
What you described there about the environment is so, you know, it's so intrinsic of any good martial arts gym. I just want to take a second and say that, because I think that's so intrinsic in martial arts. But you're right, you can get gyms where you either, you know, full of meatheads or full of arrogance, full of overconfidence.
It was never about that, oh yeah, he's being a dick, or someone's trying to stitch you up. It was always, we're looking after each other, but we are going to push.
Right, yeah. And
that came from you guys, the instructors, and everything else. That was, we are going to push, and it's going to be painful at times, but we're all going to get there.
Yeah. Now we're going to get to the big question, the whole purpose of why we've met up, really.
Right.
And the question that a lot of what I'm trying to do with this channel and this project is trying to explore.
Yeah.
And it's a question I'm going to ask you, but I'd like you to answer it as if I was a toddler or an alien or had no concept of the word. And I'd like you to, as briefly or as lengthy as you'd like, explain to me, after that incredible journey that you've been on, what is happiness?
And it's a really tricky one, because I describe it as a state. And when I say state, as in it's just where you are at a moment in time. And one thing I've sort of learned over the last few years is, if you can return to a good state, and this is sort of what dragged me out of where I was, for honest, if you can get to a good state, happy place, whatever, however you want to put that, if you can stay at that point, then you're always going to be right. So if you can always go to state, then you'll be fine. But that's how I would describe happiness. It's just naturally a feeling, naturally a state.
So you're describing it as almost like an equilibrium? Is that a fair word?
Where you're just on a level. And it doesn't have to be a happy level or a sad. It's just on a level that effectively nothing, anything that's going on in your world, nothing can affect you because you're just there. And I'm not sure that's how you could describe it to a child, but that's sort of how I would put it. You are in a good place, and anything that's going on in the world just sort of bounces off you a bit. So that's how I would describe it. I'm not sure that covers it.
It does. So, do you think an accurate word for that state is being content?
Yes.
How does that either differentiate or compete with being happy in the sense of elated and joyful and ecstatic about either life or things or people or your place? And how would you describe or advise how the two contend with each other?
So I think the happiness one and that sort of elation sort of thing, I think I'm possibly not the best person to ask because I don't get excited about much.
Okay, got you.
It's really weird. I get really excited about personal things. So small little achievements I get excited about. I'm not one of these people who celebrate wildly in public or anything like that. If anything, I'm generally quite understated, I think. You may think that.
No, I totally agree. Except for when we had a few drinks.
That's another series. So I very much underplay everything until I'm in private, and then I can sort of sit and have that moment of cool. Now I'm happy, whether I've achieved what I've achieved or just for taking part. And I guess the first part was content, wasn't it? So I think, and this has taken me a long time, to be content where you are, regardless of what's going on. So even if it's the worst day going on, I think you can still be content with where you are, because, and the only way I say that, because that sounds backward, but I revert back to being in states. So if you can stop, even on your worst day, and go, okay, it's a crap day, but actually it's just a crap day. Nothing else has changed. The world's not ending. And even if this isn't going well, life generally is fine. And possibly because I've been through what I've been through, there's not much that's going to come up and go, wow, this is a problem. I hope not. So I can sort of now go, okay, fine, this is where I am. I know this is an external feeling or something that's coming into my world, and therefore I can just live in that place, knowing that actually I can still be really happy in that place, even if things aren't working out. So even if it's a bad day, I can still sort of go to bed and be cool. It's a good day. And I think that's quite important. And I think that's down to being more grateful for things, to be honest. I think that's the biggest one.
Gratitude.
Yeah, gratitude, being grateful. It may not be the best day. You could have a really crap day at work. You could go to the gym, I don't know, as we talked about it, go to a boxing class. A crap day at work is you've gone to do a session and it's not worked out how you wanted to. And then stepping back and going, actually, do you know what? I had a day at work, but I still get paid. It didn't work out where I wanted it to be, but fundamentally I did what I needed to do, and I'm going to get paid, which is why we all work. Okay, go to the gym. Again, didn't work out where I wanted it to be, but actually I'm fit enough to be able to walk into the class. I'm skilled enough to be able to walk into the class, be accepted as someone who, yes, we're allowing you in the class. And funny enough, after getting very beaten up, the one thing I found out was that I got to protect myself.
Right. You're not made of glass.
Yeah.
It's a big thing about boxing.
And I can take a bit of a beating. And although I thought, oh, it's awful, it was actually, it's fine. And I think nearly realising that sort of made me stop a bit.
Right.
Well, what do I need to prove?
Right. And
it's not that I can knock someone out or vice versa. It's just, actually, I'm fine. and I can be comfortable in really being uncomfortable because I really wanted to create a points. Male pride. So, but I think looking back and going, actually, I'm really grateful for today because, yes, it didn't work out the way I wanted it to, but I did this, this, and this, and I still sat here at the end of the day going, cool, it's been a good day. And I think if you can do that more than most, then I think nearly every day is a good day. I think it's important.
I think you've hit a nail on the head there. Wow. So just to poke around the subject, what sort of things make you unhappy? In that period of being content, do you ever have days where you're not content? And are there particular things that trigger you to do so? Or do you find yourself always returning to that equilibrium at this point?
Now I do.
Yeah.
That's not to say that I am always happy. It's not to say that every day is the best day of the world. But I think I'm just at a place where it would have to be a really bad day for it not to be okay. And even on my really bad days, not that I have many now, but I sort of know that there will possibly more be the bad days around the corner. It's not a case of you're just always on the up, and that's the case. I think it's just knowing how to handle them better. And the more skills I have in handling myself and my brain, because that's the biggest one, is how we're all our own worst enemies. And I'm brilliant at basically destroying myself from the inside. The moment I know I'm doing it, I can stop, or most of the time I can stop and say, actually, this is just a bad moment in time. Let it go. Sometimes don't even fight it, just let it go. And that's sort of the opposite to what you want to do, because when you're having a bad time, you want to fight and you want to push and you want to do everything else that's counterintuitive, really. Sometimes it's just stopping and going, cool, it's a bad day, let it go, move on. And if that happens, generally I end up on the seafront, have a little wander, be grateful for where I live, grateful to see the sea, be out, fresh air.
Rub it in because I'm fucking missing that a lot.
Sorry. But okay, let's put it this way. Be outdoors, Howard. Be outdoors. We live in a beautiful world.
Yeah, 100%. So here's a question that I've had for you as well, actually, and actually touching on those elements. How do you negotiate the difference between? Sometimes I think a big blocker in being happy is it can be things that you feel like get in the way of your happiness, in the sense of things that you have to do in order to either clear some discomfort or to make the path forwards for yourself. And sometimes I found in my journey that can be a blocker to me being happy, especially at that moment. And then perhaps maybe even for the foreseeable. And I hope that's not too cryptic, but essentially what I'm trying to get to is how do you negotiate the things that you have to do with the things that you want to do? So it could be parts of your business. For example, your business is a hugely fulfilling thing because it's your own thing, it's your own enterprise. And I know we've talked about that in the past. But how do you negotiate the stuff that you kind of want to be doing with the stuff that you have to be doing? And then where does that leave you in terms of your journey of being happy?
There's a bit like I've just said, so there's always that sort of, there's good days, bad days, there's always something that could be better, there's always something that could be worse. And I look at it as, if it's leading me to where I need to be, or want to be, then I have to either let it go or I have to sort it. I look at it someone explained this to me really well the other day, it's either going to add to my life or it's not. And if it's not going to add to my life, then it needs to go. And that sounds quite harsh. But if something is causing you more pain than not, then you have to find a way to get rid of that. Now, that might be from a business sense. Okay, I actually don't. I quite enjoy the accountant side of it. But say someone's not very good at accountancy and doesn't enjoy it, then give it to someone else. Don't beat yourself up and say, that's what I must do, it's my business. Give it to someone else, because someone else will enjoy it. By doing that, what you've done is you've released yourself of that,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore, but you've also taken care of it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So not only have you released yourself, you've gone, cool, now I know it's fine,
Mm-hmm.
and I can do the things I like.
Mm-hmm.
So I look at it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the other thing that I really do is I try not to give too much a meaning anymore.
How do you mean?
Because, and this is something that I've sort of worked on over the last couple of years. Sorry about that.
No, it's all good.
So the moment you give
Okay.
something a meaning, the moment that meaning then causes you to feel something about it. So if someone cuts you up on the way home from work, which generally happens, the moment you go, for fuck's sake, someone's cut me up, you've already gone from it's a really nice place to really angry because someone's done something that shouldn't have happened. But if you go, someone cut me up, I'm sure they didn't mean to, it really changes how you feel about it. Because all of a sudden you're not going, so you're this, you're that. You're just going, I'm sure they didn't mean to. Mistakes happen.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can do that more than most, I think you're on that more you can kill all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something I try and work on yeah, there will be people who do things on purpose, but that only affects you if you allow it.
Mm-hmm.
So the less you can give a meaning to, the less it's going to affect you. It's not saying that actually there's lots that you want to give meaning to because there's lots of nice things to enjoy. Yeah, if we go for a couple of beers or whatever, it's brilliant, I love it. But we're having a great time. But what I'm saying is use the positives and not the negatives. Let the negatives go and just go, it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't change it. Because most of the stuff we can't change anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's out of our hands. Does that make sense?
Completely. And again, another nail on the head.
Okay.
That's great. So, and one thing you touched on at the beginning of that is about giving up or cutting out what you can and maybe outsourcing it or giving it elsewhere, where in terms of either life workload or be it business one. When's the right time to quit and move on, in your opinion? How do you know that maybe it would be a better job for you to sit still and persevere through that hardship or move on? What's the negotiation there? What are your mechanisms for maybe deciding that?
I would say there's one of two. One, personally, would be my big-headedness or my stubbornness that is going to happen, and therefore, certainly from a work point of view, I can be a little bit arrogant, possibly a bit cocky, I can do that, it's fine. And it happens. But that's sort of me trusting myself in I know what I'm doing, and therefore it's going to happen, it's fine. And I think the flip side of that is time to walk away is when something is causing you more pain than it's actually giving you happiness or bringing you any form of enjoyment, I think you have to question why.
Okay.
Come on, Kat, you can just sit down. So I think if it starts to make you unhappy, then you have to question what it's bringing to you.
Hello.
Sorry about the
It's all good.
So, yeah, I think the moment it starts bringing you unhappiness or starts to be a problem, you have to ask yourself why it's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's something you can deal with, great, deal with it. If it's something that you can't, and that's maybe an external because it's involving somebody else, and somebody else has the answer or is driving that, then if someone else is driving it, there's nothing you can do about it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So let it go.
Mm-hmm.
And that might mean you have to let it go for a day or let it go full time. I think I think it's just recognising those points. Because a lot of stuff you can do yourself, but a lot of stuff is what people bring into our world as well.
Mm-hmm.
And if people are bringing it in, then it's easy to stop it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's how I look at it.
Wow. A lot to think about there. I feel like we could keep this conversation going for a couple of hours, but I'll end on this.
That'll be part 2. Be fine.
Part 2, yeah.
In my bench.
Well, and a couple of drinks.
Yeah. That'll be the uncut sort of jackass version.
That would be great.
No, it wouldn't. No, your channel would not take. That might do actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be a whole new world.
Could go viral.
Could, exactly, yeah.
So last question I think I'll ask. Then.
Yeah.
Based on all of that, based on everything you've described, and I know you've touched on this question, or you've already kind of somewhat answered this question, based on everything that you've been through, based on your perspectives, would you say that you're happy at the moment?
Massively. Yeah, really good place. Which is sort of sad in 48. I don't know if I need to say.
You really don't, by the way.
Brilliant. Thanks. I know you. So genuine. And I am genuinely happy in whatever's going to come is going to come. The kids are at a point where they're grown up, so I sort of feel like I've done that side of life, if that makes sense, and they're still alive and they're sort of semi-good human beings. In fact, I'm quite proud of them. So I feel like I've done a lot, and the only thing I think that's really crap is it's taken me about 48 years to get here and figure out I don't really need much. I'm quite a simple person, and actually I think we're all really simple and none of us need much. We just need to realise it.
So if you could go back to 21 and see yourself at 21, what would you have said to yourself?
Well,
I had no
Where do you want to start? Don't do that, don't do it. Definitely don't do it. What would I say at 21?
I had no intention of asking that question, but where you went to with that just seemed to make natural sense.
I would tell myself to invest in myself, figure out who you are as early as possible. Invest in finding out different stuff, doing different things. Because what I think, certainly from my point of view, I was led down a path, not by anyone, naturally by myself, because of where I'd come from. And that I grew up in that where you come from is where you're defined, and that's where you end up. And the one thing I've found out is actually you decide where you want to end up. You decide how that's going to work, and the more you can invest in yourself from an early age, I think the quicker you'll get there.
Mm.
So the more you can figure out early on, it sort of makes sense. And the more you can figure out early on, the better life you're going to have.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one thing I would be sort of saying to myself. Forget what's gone. That's not who you are. Figure out who you are, and then think about where you want to go. I'll do it that way.
Amazing. Ian, thank you for your time.
Quite all right.
I am so elated to have my first piece of content done.
Excellent.
This is great. Now I can go in, edit it, and fail, and try and do good at that, and then eventually get this out. So thank you for your time. Really appreciate it, and thank you for expanding on so many deep, personal, introspective, fascinating topics. Really appreciate it. We do this every time we get together, but it's kind of weird to do it in front of cameras now. But
it's fine.
I greatly appreciate it.
No, that's cool. Love
yeah,
that.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries.
Cool.
So I think we'll leave it there. I hope you guys would like this. We'll see how it turns out when I cut it all up. Thanks.
Cheers. Hello, mate.
Awesome.